and how Ford is planning to make a comeback into the Indian market, but with a different game plan. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Kiev invites the United Nations and the International Committee of the Red Cross to Ukraine-held parts of Russia's Kursk for inspection. The Kremlin accuses Kiev of provocation. Last month, Ukraine attacked the Russian region of Kursk, seizing dozens of towns and villages. Meanwhile, Russia occupies around 20% of Ukrainian territory. In India, the police detained more than 100 striking Samsung workers. They were reportedly planning a protest march without permission. The strike at the Samsung plant near Chennai has been on for a week. The workers are demanding high wages and recognition for a union. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer meets his Italian counterpart Giorgia Meloni in Rome to tackle illegal immigration. The meeting comes a day after yet another English Channel migrant shipwreck. On Saturday, around 800 people crossed the channel, the second highest figure this year. Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger to launch new biometric passports. The junta-led states are looking to solidify their alliance. All three countries have split from the regional bloc ECOWAS. Since 2020, the Sahel nations have been under military rule after a string of coups. And TikTok to begin its appeal against being sold or banned in the United States. A law requires the video sharing app to divest from its Chinese ownership or face a ban. The move came after concerns that data of American users could be exploited by China. TikTok has 170 million American users.
Take a look at what happened.
There was another attempt on Donald Trump's life. The shooter is in FBI custody. He was caught before he could fire the shot. Donald Trump is safe. But this latest incident has cast fresh doubts about the safety of the presidential candidates in the U.S. and the state of American democracy itself. Less than 50 days are left for the presidential election. Can the U.S. keep its presidential candidates safe? Donald Trump was in Florida at his own golf course where this shooter showed up. He's been identified as Ryan Routh. He is a 58-year-old man from Hawaii. He was only 300 to 500 yards away from Trump. That's when the Secret Service agents spotted him. They noticed a rifle barrel in some bushes. That's when the agents engaged with him.
Former President Donald Trump is safe and unharmed following a protective incident shortly before 2 p.m. on Sunday at Trump International Golf Club at West Palm Beach. The U.S. Secret Service personnel opened fire on a gunman located near the property line, and this matter is under investigation.
They fired at least 4 rounds. Ryan Routh did not return the fire. Instead, he tried to flee. He dropped his rifle and escaped in a car. The local police later apprehended him on a highway. Here is an eyewitness account.
I was with my family of 3, my mother, father, and me. We were driving on 195. We were actually about to enter 195 until we started seeing a bunch of patrol officers. And then that's when we saw black Nissan speeding up. And with that black Nissan, we started seeing a bunch of more patrol officers. A helicopter actually eventually came. And then it came to a complete halt. I feel like that's the best way you could summarize it.
Routh had come to the golf course armed. Reports say that he had an AK-47 rifle with a scope, a GoPro camera and 2 backpacks with ceramic tiles. He also had a clear problem with Donald Trump and his politics. Some of his old social media posts have surfaced now. This year he wrote a post on X. It was addressed to Joe Biden, the current president of the United States, and this is what it said. Your campaign should be called something like KDAF, Keep America Democratic and Free. Trump should be Massa, Make Americans Slaves Again, Master. Democracy is on the ballot and we cannot lose. This is what he wrote on social media. He wrote about the war in Ukraine as well. He was a supporter of Ukraine. He doesn't have any military experience, but reports say that in 2022, this man traveled all the way to Ukraine. This is right after the Russian invasion. It seems he was speaking with recruits trying to get foreign fighters to fight for Kiev. Routh was believed to be involved in all of these efforts, but it's not clear if he was acting in an official capacity. His social media pages are an insight into his mind. There is a series of political messages, some showing support for Palestinians and Taiwan, some others criticizing China. There were posts talking about Chinese biological warfare. He also discussed the pandemic at one point, and he called it an attack. In 2020, he supported Bernie Sanders in the presidential election and called Joe Biden Sleepy Joe. His accounts are no longer accessible. Internet platforms have taken them down. A former neighbor of this man has also spoken out. He said that Routh was involved in some illegal activities. Listen in.
I ain't seen him in a while, so I don't know what his mindset was. Now, you know, I've been here like 20 years, and so, I mean, I met him, and he was here, and he was bad then when I first moved over here with the feds and stuff and stolen property, and had truckloads of 18-wheelers with stolen property and stuff in it. You know,
yeah, he had a lot of stolen property at his house when he was
over
here?
there, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the feds came and with the trucks and everything and all, and police. And
when did that happen?
That was years ago, though.
Routh was supposed to be produced before a judge today. Donald Trump was quick to issue a statement after the incident. He said, "I'm safe and well," and I'm quoting, "I will never surrender." Both Biden and Kamala Harris were briefed about the shooting. The White House has issued a statement. Harris said that violence has no place in America. The Secret Service says the threat level remains high, though.
Yes, the threat level is high. We have increased the amount of assets that we've supported. So we live in danger times. So, yes.
Donald Trump has praised the Secret Service. He said they did an outstanding job, but some others have doubts. Once again, questions are being raised, like how did a shooter get so close to the former president? Why was the golf course not cordoned off? Apparently, the Secret Service security was limited. Some reports also say that they spotted the shooter before when the agents were sweeping the course. And something similar, in fact, happened in the month of July as well, when Donald Trump was shot at in Pennsylvania. He had a narrow escape. The bullet just scraped his ear. The shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks, was spotted near the rally before the shooting, and despite that, he managed to get to a nearby roof and fire a gunshot at Trump. Thankfully, that did not happen today. But this remains a serious situation. Donald Trump, a former U.S. president and a presidential candidate this year, has been targeted for a second time in 2 months. America cannot take this lightly. 2 months, 2 assassination attempts. It is not random anymore. It clearly points to a worrying problem, that of political violence. And here's the thing about political violence. It never happens in a vacuum. It happens because leaders fail, because the society is too polarized. If you add guns to the mix, you get a dangerous cocktail, and that's the US right now. Highly polarized, poor leadership standards, and liberal gun laws. Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, and Joe Biden are all responsible for this. Biden came to power promising to heal America. But forget healing. America is more divided than ever before. Republicans and Democrats do not see eye to eye. They do not see each other as rivals. They see each other as mortal enemies. I have some data for you. In 1994, only 21% Republicans had a very unfavorable view of Democrats, and among Democrats, 17% had a very unfavorable view of Republicans. Now look at those numbers in 2022. 62% Republicans had very unfavorable views of Democrats, and 54% Democrats said the same thing about Republicans. Do you see the trend here? Polarization has almost tripled in 3 decades. Yes, we can blame social media for some of it, especially with tech bros like Elon Musk in charge. Look at his post after the Trump assassination attempt today. Why isn't anyone trying to kill Kamala? That's what he wrote. He's deleted the post since, but not before millions of people had seen it. Of course, social media exists in most countries, but we don't see such political violence elsewhere. So leadership, we say, is very important. In America, there's hardly any. Donald Trump is a convicted felon who tried to topple the U.S. government. Kamala Harris toppled her own boss. Trump peddles fake conspiracy theories. Kamala Harris flip-flops on policy. Neither of them inspire unity. Their words and actions have had the opposite effect, in fact. Just look at the presidential candidates talking about each other in the past and compare it to Trump and Harris.
We never doubted the other man's sincerity or the other man's patriotism.
I have to tell you, he is a decent person and a person that you do not have to be scared as President of the United States.
She's defective. She's a defective person. And we don't need another defective person as President of the United States. We just had that.
In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious.
Well, there you have it. The discourse is extreme. Harris calls Trump a dictator and Trump calls Harris a Marxist. Such name-calling may sound childish, but in a polarized society, it's the recipe for disaster. Supporters may buy into such narratives. They may decide to take matters into their own hands to eliminate the so-called dictators or Marxists. It tells you where the US democracy is at. Broken, splintered and sick. Thank God it's not Latin America or West Asia. Because then, US soldiers would be at the door. They would be dropping bombs of freedom from F-16s or firing rounds of democracy from rifles. But at home, anything goes. And you know the scary part? Things could get a lot worse. In the first attack, Trump was only wounded. He wasn't in the hospital for long, and the second attack was fortunately thwarted. But what if there is another one? What if the next time Trump is not so lucky? Can you imagine the carnage? Trump supporters attacked the US Capitol when he lost the election. What will they do if he's seriously hurt? I hope we never find out. The problem is, such political violence tends to get normalized. After the first attack, you're shocked. By the second or third time, you're not. A Secret Service spokesperson summed it up best. He said, "We live in dangerous times." That's an admission of America's political violence. The question is, what can be done? Well, the easy way out is to take guns off the streets. No guns, no assassination attempts. But since America likes guns more than peace, they need to do more. The leaders must lead by example. They must show that they disagree, but do not hate each other. They disagree with each other, but do not hate each other. We saw a belated attempt at this last week. Joe Biden was speaking to firefighters on the 9/11 anniversary. He decided to wear a Trump campaign hat. And that was a great symbol of unity. But when did it come? After Biden had retired from the presidential race, and that's simply not enough. Trump and Harris have a great opportunity here. They can show Americans a better way. But don't hold your breath for it. American leaders only seem to care about democracy abroad. At home, it's all about power.
Hello, welcome. You're watching International. It's just...
The US has a new target. America is turning all its attention on a new foe, the Russian media network RT. RT was founded in 2005. It used to be called Russia Today. The outlet's purpose was to push back against the West, offer a different point of view. But the US insists that RT is an arm of the Russian government, one of Moscow's global propaganda tools. So Washington has now decided to go after RT. On Friday, the US announced new sanctions and more.
In addition to imposing sanctions, visa restrictions, and other measures, the State Department also designated the Russian state-funded and directed media company, Rossiya Segodnya, and 5 of its subsidiaries, including RT, under the Foreign Missions Act. As a result, these actors are now required to notify the State Department of all personnel working in the United States, as well as their property.
So America will now be tracking RT journalists, keeping tabs on their property. How very supportive of free speech, we say. How does the US justify this? By claiming that RT is more than just a propaganda outlet. The US, in fact, has upgraded its accusations. It now says that RT is, and I'm quoting, an entity with cyber capabilities, one that engages in information operations, covert influence, and military procurement. You heard that right, and that last charge is new. Washington says that RT operates a crowdfunding platform, one that is providing weapons to Russian troops in Ukraine. Think about that for a second. The US claims that Russian soldiers need RT to get them weapons. Things like sniper rifles, body armor, night vision equipment, and drones. Apparently, Moscow is not able to get this equipment on its own, so it needs to crowdfund it via RT. That is what the US is implying, which is quite the claim. And even American media outlets have harbored doubts about this. Reports say that there are no obvious connections between RT and the fundraising campaign. But that hasn't deterred the US. They have gone ahead and imposed more sanctions on RT and other Russian media firms. Moscow has taken a dim view of all of this. Russia's foreign ministry spokesperson mocked the Americans. She said there should be a new profession in the US, a specialist in sanctions imposed on Russia, so that Washington does not repeatedly target entities that are already sanctioned, like RT. The US already went after RT back in 2022. Their subsidiary channel, RT America, was forced to shut down operations. 2 weeks ago, the US targeted them again. They charged RT employees with money laundering. And now we have the latest set of sanctions. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because the US is not done yet. They don't just want to stop RT within their own borders. They are going international with their suppression efforts.
I've instructed U.S. diplomats around the world to share the evidence that we've gathered on RT's expanded capabilities and the ways it's being used to target individual countries and the information ecosystem that we share. Now, each government, of course, is going to decide how it responds to this threat.
Blinken sounds almost docile there, doesn't he? He says the US will just share evidence and countries can decide what to do about it. But then you get reports like this. Apparently, the US wants India to ban RT. They want New Delhi to revoke the accreditations of RT journalists. Officials from the US Embassy have held talks with India's External Affairs Ministry and they're urging action. India has shut this down, of course. Russia is a trusted partner. India does not get involved in these petty squabbles. But what does the story tell you? If they're trying it in India, they're definitely trying it elsewhere as well. It's an all-out attack on Russian media from the so-called champions of free speech. It's American. Let's see how RT and Russia respond. Staying with India, the caste census is back in news. As you know, the census is a decadal exercise. It was last conducted in the year 2011. The 2021 census was delayed by the Wuhan virus pandemic, but now plans are being drawn up. And this time, there is a big question. Should a column on caste be added? Normally, a census looks at things like age, religion, gender, and domicile. But this time, your caste may also be recorded. Reports say the government is yet to take a final call on this. They may or may not go ahead with it. But the fact that they're considering it is significant. Now, I know you have questions. Let's look at the three most important ones here. What is a caste census? What is being considered? Why is it being considered a caste census? And will it help to have a caste census in India? A caste census records the caste of every Indian, whether it's general or scheduled caste or other backward classes. The last such census was done in the year 1931. And what did it find? 52% of India's population was OBC. Even back then, two schools of thought existed. One said a caste census would perpetuate divisions. The other said, how can you solve a problem without measuring it? After 1931, no caste data was published in India. So why is there talk of reviving it now in 2024? Well, there's a political angle and a political answer and a non-political answer. Caste politics is rampant in India. A lot of people still vote based on the caste of a candidate. So parties try to capitalize on it. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi is leading this push. He has promised a caste census if he comes to power. And it's clearly working because his party doubled its seats in this election. So the idea has traction, which brings us to the non-political answer to this question. Backward castes have been historically oppressed in India. They make up a majority of the population, but only a minority in the corridors of power. To balance this, India has quotas in colleges and jobs. These quotas are set at 50%. That's the cap, 50% quotas. So half the seats for jobs are reserved. Also half the seats in colleges, not more than half. But some parties want to tweak it. They say India's caste numbers are outdated and the actual numbers may require quotas beyond 50%. So their argument is social justice. Now, the state of Bihar published caste data in 2023. It found that 84% of its population belonged to marginalized castes. 84%. Only 15% belonged to dominant castes. Again, it helped them politically. Bihar's Chief Minister Nitish Kumar won the most Lok Sabha seats from the state. He's now a key coalition partner at the centre in the NDA government. And where does the BJP feature in all of this? That's the ruling party at the centre. They have mostly been silent on the caste census. The party has neither supported nor rejected it. But recently, we've noticed some changes. For starters, the RSS has backed the idea. The RSS is the ideological parent of the BJP. They say a caste census is fine, but don't use it for politics. Secondly, the government appears extra sensitive on caste and quotas. Consider what happened last month. The government pushed lateral entry to key positions. Basically, they wanted to hire non-bureaucrats to government jobs, like corporate honchos or researchers. Just one problem, though. Quotas did not apply to lateral hiring. Immediately, there was a backlash. Even the BJP's allies opposed such lateral entries, and within hours, the move was reversed. The government said Prime Minister Modi had personally intervened. It tells you how sensitive the issue is. Maybe that's why the government is considering a caste census, to capitalize on the traction. The question is, do such exercises even work? Do they help? Let's go back to the example of Bihar. After the caste census, Bihar increased quotas from 50% to 65%. But like I said, the legal limit is 50%. So the state's high court struck down the new quotas. Last we checked, the matter is still in court. You see, announcing quotas is easy. It's the shortcut to social justice. But look at the end result. In government jobs, 15% is reserved for scheduled castes and 7.5% for scheduled tribes. But these quotas are not being filled up. Consider grade A government jobs, the higher, well-paying ones, that's grade A. Only 13%, 1-3, are scheduled caste and 5% are scheduled tribes. Same in Central University jobs. Only 11% of the teaching staff is SC and 5% is ST. Among professors, it's even less. Only 7% SC and 2% ST. Do you see the problem here? Backward castes are not being able to fill up the reserved seats. So we need to go beyond quotas. They may win you seats, but they alone will not solve the problems. You need to invest in the education of backward castes, in their social integration. If not, this will remain a political spectacle. Every year, India produces 1.5 million engineers, 1.5 million. But do you know how many can build a core AI product? Just about 2,000. Imagine that. Artificial intelligence is the future. According to the International Monetary Fund, AI will affect 40% of all jobs in the future, 40%. And the world seems unprepared for it. And so are India's engineers. According to a new report, 67% of them think that AI will take their jobs. 87% are considering upskilling. Will that be enough to safeguard their careers? Our next report tells you.
The world of artificial intelligence. Every day there are new products, new innovations, yet the people making them are few. That makes AI talent limited. But while AI jobs are in demand, what about other jobs? Is artificial intelligence going to replace them? A report by the International Monetary Fund says that artificial intelligence could impact 300 million jobs. That's about 9.1% of all jobs in the world. According to the IMF, 40% of all jobs will be affected by AI in some way or the other by 2025. In Europe alone, 68% people fear they could lose their job due to AI. So AI is coming for your job, and the world is worried, including India's engineers. 67% of them fear AI could negatively impact their jobs. They fear they could lose their jobs. But is this fear warranted? Well, according to estimates, nearly 40% of all engineering jobs could be automated in the next decade. So they're not wrong to worry. According to a 2023 India Skills report, about 60% of India's engineering graduates are employable. Only 45% meet the industry standards. That's because of a variety of reasons. First, there's a surplus of graduates. India produces over 1.5 million engineers each year. Second, most of them have a skill gap. They have the basic education needed, but there's a lack of application-based education. That means they know the theory but fail at the practical. Also, standard engineering courses often don't prepare graduates for the workplace. So what's the solution? Well, the only way out is upskilling, and India's engineers agree. 87.5% believe upskilling can future-proof their careers. 89% want to acquire hard skills. 86% want to know more about generative AI. They want to focus more on high-level problem-solving and skills that complement AI technologies. That said, engineering is not the only job that AI threatens. There are several other jobs that could be in danger, including technical writing, legal assistants, market research analysts, travel agents, translators, customer service, and a lot more. A UK think tank report says that women, young workers, and people who are least paid will be the most affected. Even the Indian government said that some routine jobs are likely to be automated. So does that mean that your job is in danger? Well, artificial intelligence will change the job market like any new technology has in the past. Some jobs will become redundant, but it will also give birth to new jobs. The IMF says so too. We don't know what it will look like just yet, but one thing is for sure. AI will reshape the world of employment in the years to come.
Vantage continues after a short break.
Since you were there, you're an eyewitness, would first want your understand to sort of elucidate what exactly transpired there at the spot.
So it was a very chaotic scene. There was a lot of police officers that were there, and it was very chaotic. A lot of police officers with a lot of guns, and there was a lot of people yelling, and it was very chaotic. I wasn't really at the golf course, but I was there at the suspect who did get arrested. And there was a lot of police officers who were outside trying to apprehend him, and it was very scary for me.
Right, Daniel, also you have posted a couple of videos on your social media profile. Would help us understand, please, what exactly is there in those videos? What are we looking at?
So in my videos, there was a lot of helicopters, police patrol. There was a lot of type of cars and stuff like that we saw. In the far right, it was actually the suspect's car. It was a Nissan. It was a Nissan Altima, and that was a helicopter that was from the police county. But there was a bunch of police officers that were here, and they all had guns, snipers, rifles pointed at the car, and they were all screaming and yelling at him.
Also, how exactly was former President of the United States escorted after this incident transpired there at the spot, Daniel? Was he escorted to a car, to a safer spot? Are you a regular visitor of that spot as well?
Now let's turn our attention to Bangladesh, where India's challenges are only intensifying. New Delhi has a new problem to deal with. A new demand is gaining traction there, a demand for a nuclear arms treaty with Pakistan.
In order to change the Indian habitual perception Our only answer, as I feel, is nuclearization. Nuclearization does not mean that we have to be a nuclear power. Nuclearization, I mean that we have to develop a nuclear treaty with our former adversary Pakistan. Pakistan is the most reliable, trustworthy security ally of Bangladesh. This is exactly what the Indians want us not to believe. They will do anything, I can assure you, they will do anything to protect us from the Indians.
A nuclear treaty with Pakistan. This statement is going viral on social media. And who is the man pushing for it? Well, social media users have identified him as Professor Shahiduzzaman. They say he teaches international relations at Dhaka University. We tried to verify his credentials. We could not find any profile with this name on the Dhaka University website or anywhere else. However, we did find an old article on the internet. It mentions Professor Shahiduzzaman by name. This article was on the Jamaat-e-Islami website. That's right, the same organization that was banned in Bangladesh until July. The ban was lifted in August. Muhammad Yunus gave the orders himself for the ban to be lifted. He's the caretaker leader of Bangladesh. Now, under normal circumstances, few would have paid any heed to such radicals. But they're now very much part of the mainstream in Dhaka. Yunus has given these groups a new lease of life. Professor Shahiduzzaman's demand for a nuclear treaty with Pakistan was received with loud cheers. And it is being amplified by the Pakistani press. Look at these reports for yourself. The Express Tribune is a Pakistani newspaper. It carried Professor Shahiduzzaman's statement. It was part of a larger story on Bangladesh-Pakistan relationship. Apparently, a reset is in the works. Pakistan and Bangladesh are working towards restoring ties. This report says that there have been multiple meetings. Pakistani diplomats have met with their Bangladeshi counterparts. The same piece describes how hard it was for Pakistani diplomats to get a meeting with a Bangladeshi government official when Sheikh Hasina was in power. Islamabad faces no such challenge now. This report says that both sides have held a number of meetings. Next month, Muhammad Yunus will be in New York for the UN General Assembly. Yunus could meet Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on the sidelines. Islamabad has a long wish list for Dhaka. It wants them to ease the visa process for Pakistani nationals. It wants direct flights to resume and better trade and commercial ties. So Pakistan is trying to get a foot in the door. How should India see this and, more importantly, counter this? What should New Delhi's strategy be at this point, counter strategy? Reports say Prime Minister Modi was supposed to meet Yunus in New York as well, but neither New Delhi nor Dhaka has confirmed this meeting yet. However, India is intensifying contacts in Dhaka, and Indian diplomats in Bangladesh have held a range of meetings. They met several advisors of Yunus. These are the interim ministers holding various portfolios in his government, from home affairs to energy to economics and fisheries. India has been engaging with all key ministries. This flurry of engagements is a good sign. It signals India's willingness to work with the new leadership. But Yunus is sending mixed signals. Last week, he sent a new message to New Delhi. He said that he wants good relations with India. At the same time, he underlined the need for fairness and equality in ties, whatever that means. How should India respond to this? How should we see this? There is only one way forward: constant engagement. And that is how India can navigate this uncertainty, because pulling back would mean ceding ground to Islamist forces, and that would be a setback for Indian interests. New Delhi cannot afford to let that happen. Now to West Asia. On Sunday, a missile struck central Israel. It fell in an open area. No one was hurt, but for Israel, this was a big deal. They were hit by a hypersonic ballistic missile. It was fired by Yemen's Houthis. It traveled over 2,000 kilometers to reach Israel, and more importantly, the air defenses could not stop it. Of course, Israel is not taking it lightly. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that the Houthis will pay a heavy price for this. But is this strike a new escalation in the Gaza war? As the war inches close to its first anniversary, can Israel expect more such attacks? Our next report tells you more.
It was around 6:35 a.m. local time. The missile traveled 2,040 kilometers in just 11.5 minutes to hit central Israel. There were loud booms. The air sirens went off. People rushed for cover. Soon, smoke billowed from a fire. The missile landed in an open field. A fragment of it fell at a train station. Some people were injured there. This is the longest-range missile to ever hit Israel. It came from Yemen. It was fired by the Houthis, and it reached deep into Israeli territory. More importantly, Israeli air defense systems failed. Israel engaged two defense systems, the Arrow, yet it could not stop the missile from striking. So the question is, how did the Houthis achieve this? Well, the group says it's their new hypersonic ballistic missile.
The missile force in the Yemeni armed forces carried out a special military operation which targeted a military target of the Israeli enemy in the Jaffa area in occupied Palestine. The operation was carried out with a new hypersonic ballistic missile that managed to reach its target, and the enemy's defensive systems failed to intercept and face.
The Houthis say that the missile is part of a new technology. It's homegrown and apparently created by Yemeni technicians. Well, the 1994 Yemeni civil war saw the first use of ballistic missiles. But since 2015, Yemen has been relying on Iranian support for both weapons and training. In fact, Saudi Arabia pointed it out recently. It called for more pressure on Iran to restrict the constant supply of weapons to the Houthis. Of course, this isn't the first such attack by the Houthis. Since November, the Houthis have targeted Israel and its perceived interests on land as well as in the Red Sea. It launched dozens of missiles and drone strikes. The strikes cut off vital waterways, disrupting global trade. In July this year, a Houthi drone strike penetrated Israel's air defenses. It ended up killing a civilian in Tel Aviv. But while this attack may have failed, the Houthis say that there will be more such strikes in the coming days. Meanwhile, Israel is furious. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that the Houthis will pay a heavy price for this strike.
We are in a multi-front campaign against Iran's axis of evil, which is striving for our destruction. This morning, the Houthis launched a surface-to-surface missile from Yemen into our territory. They should have known by now that we were exacting a heavy price for every attempt to harm us. Anyone who needs a reminder on this matter is welcome to visit the port of Hodeidah. Whoever attacks us will not evade our strike.
The attack comes just weeks ahead of the first anniversary of the war. Last year, Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th. Israel went to war in Gaza, and since then, West Asia has plunged into chaos. Nearly a year later, the tensions are still high, and there are fears of new fronts opening in the war every single day.
Now we turn to the Maldives. It's a South Asian nation located in the Indian Ocean. It is Asia's smallest country, but with one big problem, and that is debt. The Maldivian economy is in debt distress. It took too many loans and now it's struggling to pay them back. One repayment is due next month, a repayment of some $25 million. This money is due to bondholders, people who bought Islamic Sukuk bonds issued by the Maldivian government. But Male may not be able to repay this $25 million because it lacks the dollars. At present, the Maldives has about $444 million in foreign exchange reserves. That sounds like a decent amount, but only $61 million out of this are usable. And that money is for essential imports for the next month. So you can see why the Maldives is in dire straits. It needs a bailout, and it needs it fast, which is why Male is looking at an old friend for help, and that friend is India. Ties between India and the Maldives have been frosty recently because of the Maldivian President Mohamed Muizzu. He came to power last November on the wings of an India Out campaign. He basically tried to paint India as an aggressor in his country, India had troops in the Maldives, and Muizzu tried to say that India is using them to influence his country. There were Indian troops in the Maldives but they were there to help in rescue and relief operations. That did not matter to Muizu, who used their presence to stoke anti-India sentiments, and his ploy worked. He won the presidency last November. His party swept the parliamentary elections in April this year, and he used this control to oust the Indian troops. Muizu's power play came at a cost, though. It soured decades-old Indo-Maldivian ties, and now Muizu wants India to forgive and forget and bail his country out of a jam. Mali needs money, and it needs it immediately. They need to pay back the $25 million next month, $600 million next year, and then $1 billion in 2026. Remember, right now they have just $61 million in usable foreign exchange. So they're looking to pad up their reserves with some help from New Delhi. There are two Indian instruments that the Maldives can use. One is a currency swap program by the Reserve Bank of India, or the RBI, that's India's central bank. This program will allow the Maldives to access up to $400 million immediately. India had introduced this program back in 2012 to help out its neighbors, and the Maldives is desperate to use it now. That is one option that they have. The other is a straightforward loan. In 2019, India had extended an $800 million line of credit to the Maldives. This was extended to the previous government, but New Delhi has not withdrawn it, despite all of Muizu's provocations. And now that he's in trouble, Muizu wants to avail of this old credit. The Maldivian president is headed to India reportedly sometime this week. Debt relief will be at the top of his agenda, and India has shown its willingness to help. This isn't just about being a good friend and neighbor. New Delhi also has another reason to extend a hand. It needs to keep Beijing at bay. On Friday, the Maldives signed a deal with China to strengthen trade and investment and settle current account transactions in local currencies. Basically, China threw the Maldives a lifeline. And now India will too. Muizu might be playing both sides, but India cannot just quit the game. The Maldives will be there long after Muizu leaves. And New Delhi needs to make sure that the country doesn't become a Chinese outpost. It needs to ensure that the country isn't used against India. So that means playing along for now. But hopefully India's actions will also strike a chord and remind the Maldives who its true friends really are. 3 decades. That's how long Ford had operated in India. That is until 2021, when it shut down production in the country. But the US automaker is making a U-turn. Ford wants to reboot its mothballed factory in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. It will restart manufacturing for export. But export of what? That's not clear at the moment. Ford previously built cars and engines at this factory. So what's behind their flip-flop? And what does this mean for India? Why are auto giants flocking to the world's most populous nation? Here's a report.
Ford is making a U-turn. The US auto giant wants to restart manufacturing in India. It has submitted a letter to the government of Tamil Nadu, also known as the country's Detroit. Tamil Nadu is a business-friendly state in southern India, where Ford's mothballed manufacturing plant still stands. And now the company wants to repurpose this factory. You see, Ford had operated in India for about 3 decades. But 3 years ago, the car maker declared it would stop building cars here. At the time, this was the result of a perfect storm. From slowdown in the Indian automotive market and regulatory tightening in its export market to accumulated losses, Ford was struggling to crack the domestic market. It was unable to boost volumes, so it stopped producing cars in India for domestic sale in 2021. Then halted export production in 2022. Finally, pulling the plug on manufacturing in India, the company exited the huge market. But now things have changed. The Indian government is attracting billions of dollars in investment from international car manufacturers, and car makers are interested. They want to diversify supply chains away from China. Beijing has dominated the sales of electric vehicles for years. Again, this is a perfect storm, but in a good way for India, and Ford wants to throw its hat in the ring. The details are not clear yet, but K. Hart, the president of International Markets Group at Ford, says, "This step underscores our ongoing commitment to India as we intend to leverage the manufacturing expertise available in Tamil Nadu to serve new global markets." But this move is bound to serve India as well. Ford's return to India will create more employment opportunities. Experts say at least 3,000 jobs can be expected. It's also good for the optics. This yet again solidifies India's position as a manufacturing hub for international automakers. Tamil Nadu alone is home to several car makers, including Hyundai, Nissan Motor and Renault. Jaguar Land Rover plans to open factories in India, and reportedly so does Tesla. But the Indian market is not for everyone. General Motors has given up on India, and the reason is similar to that of Ford. It's not easy for car makers to price their vehicles low enough to appeal to India's mass consumers and go beyond the country's wealthy. Sure, India is the world's third largest car market, but here international automakers face serious competition from domestic companies and foreign joint ventures such as Tata Motors and Maruti Suzuki. And it's not just about cars. In 2020, motorcycle giant Harley-Davidson exited India because it was facing fierce competition from the locally loved Royal Enfield. After all, India is a cost-sensitive market. Not everyone can get it right, but maybe this time Ford just might.
Now let's turn our attention to China. This morning, Typhoon Bebinca made a landfall in Shanghai. This is the strongest storm to hit China's financial capital in more than 7 decades. It comes just as the country is recovering from another typhoon, Typhoon Yagi, which left a trail of destruction as it passed through China earlier this month. Yagi is Asia's most powerful storm this year. Apart from China, it has devastated Vietnam, Laos and the Philippines. And now it is wreaking havoc in Myanmar. But the death toll has crossed 100, by the way, and storms, in fact, are not limited to Asia. Storm Boris is battering Central and Eastern Europe. At least 8 people have died. Across the world, storms are becoming stronger and more frequent. Our next story tells you why.
Trees toppled. Vehicles and homes battered. Streets flooded. This is Shanghai, the financial hub of China, which has come to a standstill. This morning, Typhoon Bebinca made landfall in Shanghai. Bebinca is the strongest storm to hit the city in 75 years. More than 400,000 residents have been evacuated. Hundreds of flights have been cancelled. Train services are shut. Highways are closed. But Shanghai's 25 million residents are not the only victims of Bebinca. The typhoon has already passed through Japan and the Philippines, where 6 people were killed. And now the typhoon is wreaking havoc in China, as the country is still recovering from another storm, Typhoon Yagi, the most powerful storm in Asia this year. Yagi passed through China this month. It killed at least 4 people and injured at least 95 others. Apart from China, Yagi has swept through Vietnam, Laos and the Philippines, where it proved devastating. Yagi caused severe flooding and in total killed at least 287 people. That is, until now. The storm has reached Myanmar. The death toll has risen by 113. At least 320,000 people have been displaced. 64 people are missing. Additionally, 66,000 houses and 375 schools have been destroyed. Several kilometers of roads have been washed away. Now, countries are pouring in aid. India has launched Operation Sadbhav, meaning goodwill, to send urgent supplies to Vietnam, Laos and Myanmar. India has pledged $1 million in aid. The UK has pledged $1.3 million. And Japan has provided $124,000 in aid. While Asia suffers from devastating storms, the disaster is not limited to the continent. Storm Boris is lashing Central and Eastern Europe. Austria, Poland, Romania and the Czech Republic are affected. 8 people have drowned. Hundreds of thousands of households are affected. Power outages are frequent and entire bridges have been swept away. No matter the country, climate change is making disasters worse, including storms like typhoons.
there is general consensus amongst the scientists that tropical cyclones are getting more intense, that tropical cyclones are getting wetter, that storm surges are increasing, which is due to the combination of the cyclone being more intense and sea level rise. So those are three factors that we generally agree on.
Typhoons are rare in regions like Shanghai, but that's where Bebinca made landfall. And in places where typhoons are normal, they are only becoming more intense.
This is due to a meteorological fact, a meteorological principle, which is that warm air can hold more moisture. So as the atmosphere is getting warmer, the typhoons in themselves are also getting wetter, so they can bring more rain when they make landfall. So those rainfall totals that you see in Yagi, which are exceeding 400 millimeters, chances are that we're going to see those rainfall totals more often in the future.
Natural disasters are causing widespread destruction, and people are paying the price of climate change with their lives.
A lot of people say that New Zealand is boring. It's far away from literally anything. It's got very few people, and there's not much to do, especially if you're not into outdoorsy stuff. But do not worry. New Zealand has just the plan to turn around that boring tag. An election for birds. That's right. In 2005, New Zealand started an election for Bird of the Year. You can cast your votes online. The birds with the most votes win, or the bird with the most votes wins. This year, a rare penguin has been declared the winner. They're said to be shy and smelly. Now I know what you're thinking. How does a bird election make you less boring? Well, this election has a dark past, from Russian interference to Australian rigging to a controversial bat winner. This election has seen it all, so naturally the internet is having a blast with it.
I am very proud to announce that once again the hoi-ho, or yellow-eyed penguin, has made it to the top of the podium.
For Bird of the Year this year, I'm voting for the hoi-ho, the yellow-eyed penguin.
Vantage continues after a short break.
I'm not really a regular visitor. I was from a different part of Florida, and I was just coming here. And I did see a bunch of police officers, and I did hear that President Trump was escorted outside of his estate, inside of his by the Secret Service. He was escorted by a Escalade, and they took him away.
And were you there at the spot when the shooting actually happened, when this man, Ryan, who has now been arrested for this attempted assassination thing, were you there? Did you see him?
I didn't see him, but I did see his car that did speed off, and I was actually there. And I think I saw his face for a little bit after he sped off, and then the police caught him afterwards on the traffic.
All right. And have you heard from anybody who would have perhaps spoken about Ryan being a regular visitor of that spot? Does anyone know him at all?
What to my knowledge is that there's nobody. This seems like a out of the blue statement. Nobody knows who this guy is. He seems like a very liberal man, and he looks like that this was definitely planned, and he definitely wanted to kill President Trump today.
All right. Also, please, Daniel, help us understand the demography of that location. Since you're an eyewitness, you were there. Would really love to understand from you where exactly that man was standing and how far was he from Donald Trump.
As I say again, I wasn't there at the golf course. I was there at the arrest, but I do hear from several news accounts that The guy was standing probably around 300 feet. If that's what I was heard, he was probably standing around inside of the bushes. I don't know the estimates, but he was inside of the bushes pointing a rifle at President Trump. Then Secret Service agents did see him and then did fire at him with a couple of shots, which did scare him away, which made him get inside of his car and made a chase through I-95, which he was eventually stopped. And I got to see the arrest right in front of my eyes.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. A 2-month-old baby hippo goes viral in Thailand, drawing thousands to the zoo where she lives. China celebrates Mid-Autumn Festival with dazzling lantern shows. And a Russian gardener breaks national records by growing a pumpkin that weighs, wait for it, 817 kilos. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1940, U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt signed the Selective Service Bill. All American men aged between 21 and 35 could be called for military service. It was the country's first peacetime draft ahead of the Second World War. The draft remained in place until 1973. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
बोल्ड रिफॉर्म्स कर पाएंगी या नहीं?
बोल्ड रिफॉर्म्स बिल्कुल कर पाएंगे और ये सरकार 100 दिन कंप्लीट भी हो गया। कोई भी अप्रीहेंशन का आवश्यकता नहीं है। जैसे पहले अच्छा जनता के लिए स्कीम्स हो या सिस्टमिक रिफॉर्म्स हो, वो सब बिल्कुल चलेगा।
100 दिन पूरे हो चुके हैं। आपसे एक सिंपल सवाल पूछना चाहता हूं, इस सरकार की क्या उपलब्धियां रही हैं इन 100 दिनों में? पहले भी बहुत बातें हुई थी, 100 डे एजेंडा भी बना था, क्या क्या अचीव कर पाए हैं अभी तक आप लोग?
अब सीधा देख लीजिए ना, फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्री के विषय में ही
जी
आप ओपीएस एनपीएस डिबेट, ओपीएस एनपीएस के डिबेट अभी मूव होकर के यूपीएस एक अच्छा सा ऑल्टरनेटिव आ गए हैं, जिसको पूरे सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के एम्प्लॉइज फेडरेशन ऑफ यूनियंस वेलकम कर चुके हैं। मैं उनको पूरे मन से धन्यवाद भी कही पार्लियामेंट में ही बजट सेशन में। उसके बाद डिटेल्स ऑफ द यूपीएस हैज कम आउट, जिसको हर वर्ग वेलकम ही किया है। सो एकदम सीरियस और सेंसिटिव मामला, जिसके ऊपर आने वाले 20 साल का स्टेट और सेंटर के फाइनेंसेस के ऊपर सीरियस असर पड़ने वाले विषय है, उसका अच्छा सा सॉल्यूशन हमने निकल कर दिया। इसके अलावा अब देख रहे हैं कि विश्वकर्मा योजना के तहत गांव-गांव से जो छोटे-छोटे कामगार होते हैं, जो छोटे टूल्स के साथ उनके ट्रेडिशनल बिजनेसेस करते हैं, 18 ऐसे ट्रेड्स को उसमें लिस्ट किया गया है। उन सबको चुन करके 2.2 करोड़ का एनरोलमेंट हुआ है जी। और प्रधानमंत्री जी पहला हिस्से में जितने भी लोग को देना है वो स्कीम का शुरुआत, जिसमें ट्रेनिंग भी होगा, पूरे किट भी देंगे। वो ट्रेनिंग के समय हर दिन 500 रुपया भी उनको दे रहे हैं। ऐसे अंत्योदय के दृष्टि से जो हमारे पिछले 10 साल में एक्टिवली स्कीम्स आया था, वो भी चल रही है विश्वकर्मा की योजना से। और बजट में मानती हूं वो 5 ऐसे ट्रेनिंग और एम्प्लॉयमेंट के लिए स्कीम्स हमने ले आए, जिससे 1 करोड़ लोगों को ट्रेनिंग और इंटर्नशिप के द्वारा जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज भी मिलने वाले हैं 5 साल के अंदर। उसको हम रोल आउट कर रहे हैं। और इसके साथ साथ आप देख रहे हैं एमएसएमई के लिए, माइक्रो स्मॉल मीडियम एंटरप्राइजेस के लिए, लघु उद्योग के लिए हमने 8 ऐसे स्कीम नहीं बोलूंगी, रिफॉर्मेटरी स्टेप्स ले आए, जिसके वजह से उनको बैंक से अच्छा बिना कोलैटरल लोन मिलने का हमने फंड भी क्रिएट किया। और अब तक हमारे देश में एमएसएमई का मेन प्रॉब्लम यही था कि वर्किंग कैपिटल तो मिल रही है बैंक से, मगर हमें बड़े इंडस्ट्री जैसे टर्म लोन नहीं मिलता है, जिससे हम प्लांट एंड मशीनरी का भी इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक से ले पाएंगे। उसको भी हमने बिना कोलैटरल आज टर्म लोन देने के लिए व्यवस्था बन चुके हैं, जो बजट स्पीच के दौरान भी आए। ऐसे बिजनेस आगे बढ़ाने के लिए, लिक्विडिटी हर एक को मिलने के लिए, उनका रिटेल लोन हो, पर्सनल लोन हो या ऐसे बिजनेसेस का लोन हो, उन सब का सुविधा भी हमने घोषणा की।
क्या इस तीसरे कार्यकाल में, क्योंकि आपकी कोएलिशन सरकार है, क्या आपके ऊपर कुछ दबाव है? इस बार बजट बनाते वक्त निर्मला सीतारमण क्या सोच रही थी? आपने बिहार के लिए और क्या कहते हैं आंध्र प्रदेश के लिए सॉप्स भी दिए हैं, आपने फार्मर सॉप के बारे में बहुत सारी बातें की हैं, तो क्या पहले से कुछ फर्क हुआ है, कुछ बदलाव आया है कि इस तरह का भी एक रोल बैक सरकार का भी आप लोगों के लिए कहा जाता है कि आप लोग कुछ करते हैं फिर रोल बैक कर देते हैं, तो किसी तरह का कोई दबाव है क्या? मैं ये समझना चाह रहा था।
मुझे नैरेटिव सेट करने वाले और उसके आगे बढ़ाने वाले, उसमें एक आध मीडिया के लोग भी हैं, मैं छोड़ूंगी नहीं उस बात को। मीडिया के द्वारा आगे बढ़ाने के लिए ऐसे एजेंडा सेट करने वाले तो पूरे उनके परफॉर्मेंस हाई लेवल पर है। नैरेटिव सेट करो, फिर सरकार उसको एक्सप्लेनेशन करते जाएगी या डिफेंड करते जाएगी, ये तो चल रही है। और बेबुनियाद बहुत सारे नैरेटिव आ रही है। इसमें ये एक यू टर्न का मामला भी हुई है। यू टर्न कहां हुआ? मेरे मंत्रालय के विषय में मैं बोल रही हूं। जब हर बजट के समय पर पिछले 5 बजट्स में बजट पेश करने के बाद पूरे देश भर घूम करके चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स हो, टैक्स एक्सपर्ट्स हो, इंडस्ट्री, चेंबर ऑफ कॉमर्स हो, सबसे बात करके पेश किया हुआ बजट के ऊपर सुझाव ले आकर के ट्रेशरी अमेंडमेंट्स हम करते थे, जिससे मुझे याद है, बिल्कुल याद है, एक बार शुरुआत में लोग हमसे पूछते थे ये क्या है, अभी बजट पेश हुआ और रिसेस के बाद सेकंड सेशन शुरू हो रही है बजट का, उस समय आप इतने सारे अमेंडमेंट्स ले आ रहे हैं।
जी।
मैं डिफेंड भी किए अमेंडमेंट्स इसीलिए ले आ रहे हैं, सुझाव जनता से जब